Hi, and thank you for joining us. I'm Rima Dael, General Manager of WSHU Public Radio in Fairfield, Connecticut. And it is my pleasure today to be with my friend and colleague, Laurie Herrick. Now, Laurie is the founder and president of Rainmaker Consultants. She has a huge passion for the nonprofit sector. That started around activism around ending hunger and poverty. She has over 25 years now as an author, a fundraising consultant, an entrepreneur, runner, and I'm also going to add in there glass blowing, because I know glass blowing is super important, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But what you need to know about Laurie is that she's been working with fundraising mentors Lynn Twist, author of The Soul of Money, Terry Axelrod, who created the Benavon model. And she's also had the wonderful honor to work with two Nobel Peace Prize laureates. Can I say that again? Two Nobel Peace Prize laureates, Al Gore in climate change and Muhammad Yunus from the Grauman Bank, are doing work around micro lending. So Laurie, hello, you have a new book. How do you feel?
I am so excited about having my book complete. It is,
and maybe just a little tired.
Yeah. I as we were talking a little earlier, it's like the longest labor ever, but it was a great ride. It certainly was.
And this has been a labor of love. And ever since I've known you, you've been talking about this topic. Yeah. So tell us what led to the book, what led you to here writing this book now, kind of during our global pandemic even.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what a ride, right? Well, I have to say, first of all, thank you, Rima, for being here and for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. I have had the pleasure to work with and play with so many incredible organizations in the field, nationally and internationally, that are doing extraordinary work. And they're really, without them, our world would not be the same. There are people working on things related to major issues that we have and major opportunities that we have, like the arts and beauty and so on. So there's this wide range of organizations. But what I found over the course of not just my career, but my life, even before I was in the field of not-for-profit work, I found that so many of them were struggling. And they were struggling because they couldn't raise the money they needed to fulfill their missions. They were struggling because their development directors weren't staying. The current stats say that they stay for about a year and a half before moving on. Their donor retention rates were abysmal. And that still is happening. Board members weren't engaged. And the bottom line was that all of these different things that many of the organizations that I connected with, they were struggling with, it was really impacting their ability to raise the money that they needed to fulfill their job. I've been honored to work with all of those organizations, and I've learned from a lot of them. But where my first learning and where my first passion for this came in was my work with Results. You mentioned hunger and poverty work, and I was a volunteer. And I eventually was able to get into a dream job, which was to raise money for that organization. And at first, it went really well, and I was excited and energized and motivated. And then it sort of came crashing down, and I was really stuck. And my boss came to me and said, Laurie, we need to raise $40,000 by the end of this year, or tell me who we should fire. So the pressure was on. And I went to my go-to buddy donor that we have and said, what do you think? Could you give us $10,000? And he said, my wife and I just recently gave. This doesn't make sense. And of course it didn't. I was a new professional. I didn't know what I was doing. But I got off the phone and I did what no one's supposed to do in the field, especially the development people. I cried. And I thought, what am I doing? I can't do this. And after a few more struggles, I went back to my boss and I said, maybe the person we should let go of is me. Maybe this isn't the right field for me. I don't know what to do. And she said, okay, call my friend, call Lynn Twist. It was awesome. So I called Lynn Twist and I asked her if she could come and do a training with us. And she did. And that training was life-changing for me. First of all, I learned all sorts of nuances and distinctions that were brand new to me, that were different than anything that I had heard of before. But there was this moment that was when my life took a big shift. I said, I heard of some organization, Lynn, that just got $1 million donor. We should have $1 million donor. So Lynn says, Laurie, are you taking a stand to get $1 million donor for results? And of course, I start backpedaling, thinking, I can't raise $40,000. How am I going to raise $1 million, right? And she said, let me tell you how. She said, when you take a stand for it, you essentially throw your hat over the fence. Once your hat's thrown over the fence, you got to go up and over the fence and go get it. So you're putting it out there and you're making a public statement like, we're going to do this. And it helps you to get in the right mindset for it. The second thing is you need to find a committed listener, somebody who will be your buddy, who doesn't think you're crazy, who says, yeah, we can do this. So I found somebody, this guy named Peter, and we would run together. And so we did that. We'd run together and say, what do you think? Who do you know? I have to admit, we kept thinking about who's going to come save us. Who's that super rich person that we don't even know is going to drop us $1 million? We brainstormed all of that. And after maybe a year or so of us periodically checking in and trying different things that all didn't really work out, Peter said something that knocked me off my feet nearly. We were running, so I didn't really fall over. But he said, Laurie, I'm your $1 million donor. I was shocked. I had no idea. I knew he was a donor and he was a bigger donor, but I had no idea that he had that capacity. So a bunch of things I learned from that. One thing I learned, first of all, afterwards is you do usually have to ask. That was an exception, all right? But what I learned was that by taking a stand, there was a chance it was going to happen. There was no chance of it happening until I took a stand for it happening. The second thing is that I started to see that my mindset had been in the way of me being able to get this kind of success, that I believed it was impossible. Suddenly, it was possible. And part of what made it possible was when Peter and I would run, we would envision what it would be like if there was $1 million donor. If it was, what if we had that kind of funding? What would the organization look like? What would be the impact out in the world? How would that change things for people? And it started to make it real for both of us. And so both Peter and I had a transformation of sort where we saw our blind spot, where we suddenly saw something possible that we hadn't ever imagined before. And this idea has forever stayed with me, that our mindset is really our superpower, and it's our opportunity to really shift what we're doing.
So thank you for sharing, but let's, we don't want to bury the lead because that's bad in news organizations. So can you lift up what your book looks like and tell us what the title is?
Sure. So it's Choose Abundance, Powerful Fundraising for Nonprofits, A Culture of Philanthropy. And each part of these actually is very intentional and really describes what it's about. So Choose Abundance means it's a choice. If you have an intention, you got a chance of making it happen. Without that, making that choice to this is our priority, this is our commitment, then it's not going to happen. Powerful fundraising for nonprofits, that's really what the ultimate goal is to have that kind of fundraising success. But the last part, a culture of philanthropy, is a little more abstract for some people. But the idea is that if we address the culture, we have a chance of making the change we want. And this is, I think, what really differentiates this book from many of the resources that are out there. And I have to say, there are a lot of great resources, but I've been introduced to this model. It's called the Wheel of Change. It's invented by Robert Gass and the Social Transformation Project. And what he says is that if you want to change the culture of your organization, he draws a circle. He says you have to do all three things in that. You have to address the behaviors, which is what most fundraising training is in, right? Like, how do I ask? Or how do I build a a planned giving program, or how do I convince my board members to do X, Y, or Z? Those are the behaviors. The structures, those are things like your database or your plan. And the third part is the hearts and minds. And that's where the mindset lives. That's where our attitudes and our beliefs live. And Peter Drucker is famous for the quote, right? That culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's really true, because if your culture is one where people think that fundraising is that evil, it's an evil necessity, then it means that no matter what you do, if that's the belief system, it's going to get in the way of your fundraising success.
And that's a lot of what you and I talked about when I was the executive director of Country Dance and Song Society, because at that point, when we brought you on as an early consultant to think about our comprehensive campaign, it was, oh my God, how are we going to raise over $1 million if the largest gift had ever in the history of the organization been $25,000?
Right.
And it was that you and I, that's what we talked about, changing the mindset, because ultimately the person that got us the $1 million gift was a first-time board member who finally saw that this was possible and he could make an ask because he knew someone, and it wasn't even me. And that's the way we want it to be, right? In terms of creating this opportunity around the culture of philanthropy.